In the comparative dark age of the lightweight division, Takanori Gomi was one of its brightest lights. His swashbuckling style and huge knockout power saw him earn a cult following in his native Japan, so there was much intrigue when the fighter joined the UFC in 2010. The fanfare, however, would be short-lived, as age, mileage, and a fast-evolving roster saw the Japanese legend become one of the biggest flops in company history. We look at how the Fireball Kid's aura was quickly extinguished. Welcome to the INC, and this is the story of Takanori Gomi in the UFC. In the mid-2000s, you could make a claim that Takanori Gomi was Japanese MMA's biggest star. Contrary to the style he became synonymous with, Gomi's combat career began on the wrestling mats, competing in several freestyle and catch events in the late 90s, including a win over another Pride veteran in Mitsuhiro Ishida. The success, however, came at the expense of his home life, with Gomi suggesting that he had been disowned by his father when he dropped out of high school to prioritize his wrestling career. Gomi's success in the singlet led him to courting the attention of Shudo. The Japanese promotion had built a reputation as a starting point for the nation's top MMA fighters, and Gomi soon added his name by winning his first 14 fights, including UFC veterans Johnny Eduardo and Leonardo Santos. Gomi's success in Japan saw him earn a match with UFC champion BJ Penn in the Prodigy's first match since leaving the promotion. While Gomi succumbed to the Hawaiian by third-round submission, his stature as one of the world's top lightweights was all but confirmed. In 2004, Gomi followed most of his countrymen by signing a deal with Pride Fighting Championships, but the fighter that graced the promotion was a far cry from his Shudo days. Having taken big steps to improve his stand-up, Gomi emerged as one of the company's most dangerous strikers, combining fast hands and huge knockout power to steamroll Pride's burgeoning lightweight division, while his wrestling background made any attempt to get the fight to the mat almost impossible. Over the next 3 years, Gomi would rewrite nearly all of Pride's record books, the company's longest winning streak and fastest win, as well as being one of 4 men to win a title and a Grand Prix tournament with the promotion, picking up wins along the way over Tetsuya Kawajiri, Hayato Sakurai, and former UFC champion Jens Pulver.
And like you said, oh! Gomi knocks out Jens Little Evil Pulver!
As well as being one of Pride's most successful fighters, Gomi was also one of its most exciting, with his matches against Kawajiri and Nick Diaz often regarded as some of the greatest in company history. The latter was overturned to a no contest when Diaz tested positive for marijuana levels 12 times higher than those allowed by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, making it the most Diaz fight result of all time. By the fall of 2007, Gomi's reputation had transcended even his homeland, so much so that when the UFC purchased Pride later that year, Dana White cited a match between Gomi and Georges St. Pierre as one of his dream fights.
We get to see the great fights like Fedor versus Randy Couture, Shogun versus Chuck Liddell, Gomi versus Georges St. Pierre. We and you, the fans, all benefit, and the fighters, to find out who really is the best fighter in the world.
Despite attending several UFC events, Gomi turned down a company contract to sign with Sengoku, one of many Japanese promotions to form in the years after Pride's closure. While Gomi continued racking up wins, the first warning signs of his career started to emerge, most notably in a loss to 40-fight veteran Satoru Kitaoka for the company's lightweight title. Most believed that Gomi had started to lose the speed and explosiveness that made him such a formidable threat in Pride, but it didn't deter the UFC, who signed the fighter amid much fanfare in January of 2010. Gomi was given a very strong litmus test for his company debut, as he faced former lightweight title challenger Kenny Florian in the main event of Fight Night Charlotte. Although known largely for his grappling, Florian spent the first 2 rounds peppering Gomi with jabs and body shots, the Japanese fighter showing little head movement as he spent most of the fight waiting for an opening for his trademark power shot. Having done the hard work on the feet, Florian took the fight to the mat early in the third, Gomi showing little resistance as Florian wrapped up a one-sided win midway through the round, submission defense becoming a key narrative throughout Gomi's UFC tenure.
It is all over! Kenny Florian has choked out Takanori Gomi!
The one-sided result led to an extreme backlash towards Gomi in the MMA community. most jumping on the bandwagon of the fighter being washed, and others even using it as evidence of Pride's roster being inferior compared to the UFC's, with Florian having to defend his opponent on social media in the days after. It did, however, raise questions over how the UFC would use Gomi for his next fight, either as a stepping stone for rising prospects or against another declining veteran in a dream match. The call instead went to Tyson Griffin, a longtime veteran considered one of the UFC's most exciting fighters, boasting 5 Fight of the Night bonuses and the accolade of dragging Sean Shirk to the best match of his career. After dropping a split decision to Evan Dunham, Griffin looked to use the beleaguered Gomi to restart his push for a title fight. It was there where the Fireball Kid reminded fans of his greatness.
Oh! And he got rocked! It is all over!
Gomi became the first man to finish Griffin in his MMA career, earning the fighter a Performance of the Night bonus and silencing those who'd written his epitaph after his loss to Florian. Fans hoped that Gomi would use the win to kickstart his faltering career, only for him to fall at the first hurdle against former Strikeforce champion Clay Guida, Gomi being flummoxed by Guida's erratic movement before succumbing to the Carpenter late in the second round. UFC 135 saw Gomi reacquaint himself with the Diaz brothers, taking on Nick's younger brother Nate, who was looking to revive his career after a failed spell at welterweight. While Gomi's match with Nick had been an all-action slugfest, Nate made things look much more straightforward, tagging and dropping Gomi multiple times before submitting the Japanese legend with an armbar. A third loss in 4 led to Gomi making drastic changes in his personal life, relocating to America to train with the American Kickboxing Academy, hoping a more wrestling-centric gym would alleviate his issues on the ground. The new arrangement got its first test at UFC 144 against newcomer Eiji Mitsuoka, who was taking the fight as a short-notice replacement for George Sotiropoulos. Mitsuoka nearly added to Gomi's woes by dropping his countryman late in the first, before Gomi's mix of uppercuts and clinch knees proved too much for the 36-year-old. Gomi claimed a second win in a Fight of the Night performance against Mac Danzig, and added with an improved physique and more rounded skill set, fans hoped that Gomi's UFC tenure had finally begun to turn a corner. After beating one Ultimate Fighter winner, Gomi faced another when he took on Diego Sanchez at the Saitama Super Arena, host of many of his successes during his spell in Pride. Gomi looked set for another by outlanding the flat-footed Sanchez, who was feeling the effects of a botched weight cut the day before. While Sanchez was able to land some takedowns, most believed that Gomi's pressure and more refined striking would do enough to earn the judges' nod. Those at ringside, however, thought otherwise, as Sanchez was given the judges' nod, much to the chagrin of the hometown crowd. Alarmingly, it wouldn't even make the top 5 of the most egregious Diego Sanchez decisions. We might have to make a video about that one day. After a Fight of the Night bonus against Isaac Valley Flag, Gomi returned to Japan against unbeaten prospect Miles Jury, who entered the UFC having won all of his fights in the first round. Gomi would unfortunately be the mean rather than the outlier, as Jury cracked him in the opening stages before finishing the match with ground and pound. The loss being the first time Gomi had succumbed to strikes in his MMA career, it would prove a sign of things to come, as Gomi embarked on a 4-fight losing streak with all of his losses coming in the same manner, crumbling at the first sign of resistance before succumbing to his opponent's ground and pound, including losses to Joe Lozon and Jim Miller at UFC 200. The streak was such that fans started to question whether Gomi was permanently damaging his long-term legacy, to which the fighter replied, "I'll probably be dead by then, so it doesn't matter to me." Gomi's final appearance came in 2017 against Korean fighter Dong-Hyun Kim. Kim followed the template of his peers by dropping Gomi early on the way to the biggest win of his career. The UFC's patience with Gomi had finally worn out as the fighter was released from his contract 4 weeks later, having gone 4-9 with the promotion and losing his past 5 by first-round stoppage. Despite aggressive calls to retire, Gomi remained active by signing a contract with Rizin, who began booking the fighter in a series of attraction bouts, including a boxing match against company star Tenshin Nasukawa. The highlight, however, came on New Year's Eve 2021, when Gomi returned to the 4-ounce gloves against fellow UFC washout Melvin Gillard. Gomi finishing his fellow veteran with strikes for his first MMA win in 4 years. Takanori Gomi's UFC tenure was likely always going to end in disaster. The fighter was considered shop-worn by the time he left Pride in 2007, so 3 years and a developing level of talent was only going to expose his limitations. Gomi also showed an unwillingness to evolve, continuing to rely on his aggressive stand-up when his body no longer had the durability to support it. While unsuccessful, Gomi's time in the Octagon showed flashes of brilliance that reminded fans of the swashbuckling phenom of his heyday. And if that's the legacy of his UFC run, then maybe it was worth it in the end. This is the INC. Please like, share, and subscribe. Post your feedback in the comments, and donate to our Patreon page for hours of exclusive content.